So a little over a week ago, I made a video on America's Not America Anymore and the story of being homeless in Boston. A lot of people were checking out, a lot of people were commenting on it, and people were requesting to hear more stories, so I'll tell them. So to begin the story of being homeless in Boston, we have to rewind back to February 2023. I was living with my buddy in Maine from high school. I was looking for bartending work, handed in resumes all around these areas. None of them would hire me because they said it was too slow to have business in the winter because the tourists weren't here. So I was trying to figure out where I can get bartending work. I texted this guy that I met at the Cheers bar in Boston my first night coming back after not being there since 2008. On my way to Maine, I stopped by Boston, which was December 2022. I stopped at a Cheers bar, which I didn't even realize Cheers was filmed there. So I had a Screaming Viking, which was where this video came from. Afternoon, everybody. God, that Screaming Viking was strong. It was blackout drunk. Thank God I took a train there and back. So to get on with the story, I was looking for bartending work in Boston. There was a guy I met at the Cheers bar, and he said he knew a bar in the area that needed people, which was the Black Rose. There was a bartender I knew there and was somewhat friends with him. He seemed like he was getting me and what I was doing and trying to do to get there. He helped me out a lot. If he's watching this, hey, how's it going, man? So, figured out the bar. I got the address and the information. Then I figured, okay, but how am I going to get there? I don't want to drive. Then I realized, duh, it's New England. Take a train. So I did. I went to the Portland Head train station. And it was a little scary at first, but after the second and third time, it got better. So it was a extraordinary feeling taking a train all the way down there, and I had to take a bus from Haverhill back to downtown Boston on my first day there, which was also where Rob Zombie lived, and that was quite shocking to learn about. So I was there, getting to feel the city and the vibe, taking some pictures on the way there. I was learning the city of Boston very quickly. It's nothing like the Ted movie. It's a little bit like it, but it's changed quite a lot in the past 10 years. I was walking all around, handing in resumes everywhere. People in Boston were very helpful, but at the same time, they could be fucking assholes. I was handing my resume to this one bar, and then another bar told me they knew another bar that was hiring, which was near Fenway. I was applying to all these bars everywhere besides that one bar at the Black Rose. I'd handed in to about 30 of them total. I remember my second train ride, I handed in more resumes, even handed to the same areas, and they were still taking it like they forgot about me or they just didn't give a fuck. So, after all that, I realized all the bartending work I need is Boston. So, the bartender at the Black Rose said, "Buddy, you live in the state of Maine. Nobody's gonna hire you." And I was like, "What do you mean? You live 2 fucking states away, dude. That's not dependable. Like, how you gonna get there and back?" And he's like, "I sure wouldn't fucking hire you." And that, whoop, knocked some sense into me. I was like, dude, you're right. What the fuck? I'm stupid, you know? But I mean, people in California, like, I lived in Bakersfield in the 2000s, and San Francisco was 5.5 hours north of Bakersfield. And all the people who lived in like the big, nice, and expensive houses around us, they worked in San Francisco. The ones who lived in like the $1 million ranch mansions in Bakersfield at the time, they worked in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is about 2.5 hours south of Bakersfield, which is about the distance from Portland to Boston. So to me, I was like, hey, I'm only this far away, and Boston doesn't have enough homes for everyone there. Why not live in Portland and just bartend here, bartend there? But the logic doesn't really get through and tie to everything. So I realized, okay, we need an address in Boston. So what do I do? There's not enough homes in Boston. It's a tough place to live. Like, I handed in a resume to the Oyster Place in the historic district next to Hennessy's and Dirty Nelly's. I don't know the name of it right now, but I'll figure it out later. I handed my resume there, and this dude was like the old school Boston, where he literally is not afraid to say what he needs to say to you. So as I'm applying, he was literally like, "What you doing out alone, kid?" And I told him, "I'm applying to be a bartender." "Where you live? Show me ID. State of Maine? Phew, can't hire you. You're not dependable." And I was like, "You bet your ass I am." And then he's like, "Okay, how you gonna get there?" "Train." "What are you doing the train breaks down?" Which happens quite a lot. And I was like, I will call an Uber, I'll call a taxi, I will do whatever I need to get here. I am that dependable. And I was like, I am dedicated to what it is I want. And then he's like, okay, you have it. So I remember the next time I landed my resume there, I said to him, I live in the area, but I don't have a home. And then he said, no apartment, no job. And yet we have a terrible homeless problem. So anyway, I got to Boston sometime in April after what happened between my buddy and I. I was going to leave sooner or later anyway, so me leaving had absolutely nothing to do with him. I actually was wanting to leave because I just wasn't getting any work, and I didn't want to smooch off someone else's house and food or just shelter overall. I don't like that feeling. I want financial independence like I had at my last 3 apartments. So I kind of felt like, I don't know, I overstayed my welcome, even though I didn't. I just wanted to leave anyway because it wasn't working out for me there. So it had nothing to do with anybody up there. So after I was living in my car in the Boston Common Garage that I mentioned, there was one bar that actually was wanting to hire me before I took the leap of faith. I can't remember the manager's name, but he was willing to hire me and get the hang of things. And he even took me in the back where like all the kegs were. And he said he wanted to hire me, and I got there and I told him I live in the garage down the street. And he's like, perfect, you're closer and more dependable. And for some reason, right when he hired me, like, he got fired. I remember it was my first week in Boston. I drove up there and had to park somewhere around the area because the Boston Common Garage was full that day. That was the last day I saw him, was that day. And he said, yes, we'll have you start next week. And when I came back to ask about orientation and stuff, he was nowhere to be found. And when I asked the bartender who was there, who had a very Irish accent, he said, he got fired, mate. And I was like, what? Yeah, he said something about him being drunk on the job and that he got fired to where he wouldn't show his face there. And it explained why he wasn't answering my calls. So there's that. That was the one place I could have got my foot in the door at, but like, if I was really wanting to get hired there, don't you think they would tell the person that got fired? But then they had like 3 new people who got hired, and they said nothing was available. So there was that. I was living in my car, obviously, and after I would sleep in the car, I would wake up, pay the ticket, and drive out of there. And I remember that road that was for cars only because of the short bridges. The traffic there was a nightmare. I remember car. But the traffic was just terrible. You have to like dart in and risk not getting hit. That was how it was at that roundabout in Revere too. Oh, that roundabout was terrible. So I remember I am taking the Tobin Bridge, that little icon bridge you see in Boston. I had to take the farthest left, take that circular loop and keep heading up. Then I had to take the next bridge, which is on the side of Chelsea. Sometimes you'll find like Massachusetts Highway Patrol hiding in the corner. You could be going 7 miles over and they just don't give a shit. I remember I took that highway straight up all the way to Revere Beach. And that was where I hung out most of the time, was Revere Beach. And there was the Market Basket right on Revere. And that was where I'd hang out every single morning after leaving the Boston Common Garage. Revere was a interesting area. Before the Boston Dark Cloud took over, I remember Revere was an interesting place, especially Revere Beach. I remember it looked very foreign. It had a vibe. It had an interesting design to that area. But anyway, I remember I was at the Market Basket every morning. Sometimes I would get there like 20 minutes before they open, and like, I've never seen this before, and I think this might be a Boston thing, but whenever Market Basket and its staff are coming in to open the doors, there will be like 20 senior citizens there, and they look like they've been hanging around that Market Basket for years. And when the staff comes in to open the door, there were like 10 of them start hanging around the door, and the staff will open it like 10 minutes early. Like, this area just seems like it hasn't left like the 50s with the way the people were hanging around the store waiting for it to open. Once they come in, they grab their breakfast sandwiches and meals, they get their coffee, they get their donuts, and everyone just hangs around and chit chats like they've known each other for decades. There'd be that one guy who was apparently the rich guy. He had like this big of a wad of $100 bills, and he was big and muscular, but he seemed like he was down to earth. But at the same time, if he needs to be an asshole, he will. He was like Popeye. He was literally bald like Popeye too. Holy shit. So once everybody gets their coffee, they get mostly Boston cream donuts. They'd be like this gigantic for like literally $1. And even the coffee, like the smaller medium, was $1. I will admit, for Boston, their donuts and coffee are actually really good. Especially when you're only paying like $3.25 for that value. Like, they were gigantic donuts, and this was a gigantic coffee. It was enough to wake me up after getting 4.5 hours of sleep in the back seat of my car. Like, that's how strong the coffee was. So they had the cafe lounge at Market Basket, and that was where I'd hang out. And there was the same senior citizens every single morning, and there used to be like the one guy who was like, I wouldn't say the leader, but like the icon of the area. And they have like their own little show. They get up, they dance, they get up and insult one of another. It was literally like Family Guy. It was kind of a bit of Ted too, but it was more like maybe its own TV show, where like the old guy's telling some crude jokes about another coworker or just something that happened. He was like 80 with like tattoos everywhere. The dude was in such great health too. Like, he looked like he's 60. He would still drive his car. He still walks without crutches or any of those things or a wheelchair. Like, this dude's literally walking. He's walking like a 30-year-old too. Like, he's not slow and he's not fast. Like, this dude is in really good health for the age of 81, from what he tells me. So that was where I'd hang out. I would sit at the Market Basket Lounge every morning for probably about 3 hours at most. Now, I was homeless and had nowhere to go until I had some orders for DoorDash, and it would take a couple hours or halfway through the day just to get on the schedule because it was oversaturated. So I would sit at the lounge every morning after getting my coffee, my donuts, or getting their breakfast sandwiches. I was able to get their Amp Energy for literally $1.25. Like, they were a discount store, and they're from Massachusetts. Their headquarters was like 30 minutes away from Boston. So after that, usually around 9:30 at its earliest, but average of 10:30 or so, that's when the schedule starts to open for like the whole day before the oversaturation takes over. And that can be in as quick as like 20 seconds. So you gotta be like on alert with it, because you gotta like snatch what you can because it was so oversaturated. So as I'm waiting for those 2 or 3.5 hours in the morning, I would take advantage of that time to charge up my phone, charge up my portable charger to charge the phone in case the battery dies. I would also use that area to sip on my coffee and eat my donut so I have something to eat. And sometimes I would use the bathroom to like wash myself because I had nowhere to shower besides a motel. Well, I wouldn't say shower, just at least like wash my face and my armpits so I wouldn't create a disaster body odor. So every morning I would sit there, and the senior citizens actually cared about me to a degree. They would say things to me like, yo, what are you doing here every morning? Don't you got a job? Very old school, like, get a job. What the fuck's wrong with you? Get a job, you lazy bum. It's the attitude. And I would tell them, like, I'm here for bartending, I'm just not getting anywhere yet. And then I told them my situation, saying I came from Maine. And the dude was whispering, like, listen, I've lived in my car too. I know how it is. It's like, just keep trying. I'm just pushing you. So I tried and 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 nothing was working. So every morning I hung out there, and once the DoorDash order hit, I remember I was making some pretty good money on like maybe my first 6 weeks being there. After that, it just went downhill. My first few weeks there, I remember once the DoorDash app opened up for schedules, I remember it would let me work till as far as like 10 p.m. or so. And I remember the first few weeks, I was able to get on the app and make about $130 before like 1 p.m. at times. But then after that, it starts to die out. And I remember I'd be in DoorDash doing like Everett and stuff, and there'd be orders there. Oh God, I remember that road towards Everett was a disaster. I remember the traffic would be so built up in that tiny little intersection with the red lights, and you got all this traffic around you. And as you're waiting to turn left on that road on the opposite direction back to Revere Beach, oh my God, the traffic. Oh God. I remember rows and rows of cars on every side, every direction, with the traffic in front of you with 2 lanes. And when you take a long time to get that turn, you hear beep, 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 beep. You got people honking the horn. They got no fucking patience over there. It gets a little overwhelming. Oh my God. Revere and Everett, Chelsea, they were the fucking worst. Oh God. East Boston was a fucking nightmare. I remember East Boston. Interesting area. You had like the steep hills and the old houses. And I remember going up and down these hills when doing deliveries, seeing the old houses. It had like a little bit of a look of San Francisco because of the hills and the houses and the way they were built. I remember there was that one area in East Boston where the McDonald's and the H&R Block is. That area was all Latino and Hispanic. You'll just see Mexicans and everyone not speaking English and nobody white but you for the most part. I would see some really hot Latinas with their short dresses pulling them down so I can see their ass. I mean, anyway, so I was in that area quite a lot, and there was actually a Brazilian buffet steakhouse like right down the street from it. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a Brazilian buffet where they weighed everything by the pound. So I remember it was like about 25 or $30, but it was worth it. It didn't even feel like a buffet with how fresh the food was. Like everything was shiny clean. Everything was so fresh. It literally tasted like I was at a 5-star dine-in. That food was delicious. And I felt like I was making new friends with how social people in Boston are. Yeah, like everything was working out the first few weeks I was there. Like I got to experience Cambridge, and Cambridge is where all the young people that are my age or younger hang out. All these cool things going on. It's exotic nightlife, going up some hills and turns, and Mexican and Italian, Indian, Korean restaurants open late at night with flashing lights and colors everywhere. Like it was an active area. Like Cambridge, that was where I wanted to live. But man, the rent was so high. I think it was like $2,800 minimum. And I remember seeing like the downtown skyline from the area of Cambridge. And I remember being in Charlestown where you get the steep slopes with the downtown and the bridge area. It was quite an experience being outside of that area. Man, like the first few weeks was really fun. Like seeing Charlestown with like the slope and the buildings and the bridge and the downtown skyline, it kind of had a San Francisco look to it, or some other cities around the world that had that kind of scenery. You definitely do feel like you're in the 1700s anywhere in Boston, especially the old houses. I don't know, I just resemble a lot of Ben Franklin, George Washington. I don't know, anything from the 1700s, just anything. like John Hancock or just whatever. I remember it was quite extraordinary. It first few weeks was pretty cool, but I guess like I said in Miami, when things get hard, you start looking for things to blame. And I got to explore all around the Boston metro area. I was staying at Motel 6 in Danvers a few times. I stayed at a hotel called Lakeside by Wakefield. I got to check out Salem, the House of Seven Gables, while I was there. I had a lot of fun. Um, I got to check out like other parts of Salem, like the Salem Common, the neighborhoods. Like Salem had such a laid back vibe compared to Boston. Like it was so chill and soothing, which is pretty crazy knowing that Salem was a witch city. But Boston, it's got a mix. It's like red and blue mixed together, purple with red and blue here and there. That's how it feels. Like it's good, it's bad, it's up, it's down, it's left, it's right, just distorted. The giant roundabouts in Revere were just a fucking nightmare. I remember driving around Revere Beach quite a lot. It's a beach where like you got like the really long, wide area with all its historic ancient buildings everywhere, but wide open spaces where you can see like islands around it. It was a pretty neat beach, but I like the coast of Maine more, probably because it was all nature and there's no cities around it or noise disturbing you. And I guess it just felt more like nature because Revere Beach, even my buddy says this too, he feels like it's a dark cloud there too. That's where I would hang out quite a bit after Market Basket and everyone else was leaving, or I just didn't want to overstay my time there. I would hang out in Revere Beach because after 6 weeks of being there, the DoorDash was slumping and slumping and slumping and slumping. And I would stay at Market Basket till 10:30 a.m. like usual, charge up my phone and charge my stuff. But after 10:30 and I'm not getting any orders, I would just go to Revere Beach and just sit on the beach about half the day. And the parking was 4 hours for free. So, I mean, you can't beat that. So I was hanging around Revere Beach quite a lot until I got a DoorDash order. Then I do my DoorDash. I remember there was a breakfast diner I would hang out at called Eddie's Diner right down the street towards Malden. That was where I get my omelets and stuff and have some better value in food. Their prices weren't too bad. Everything was like under 15 bucks or so. It was a local diner. Had no problems with anybody except for this one chick. I remember she was Latino. Bitch. I mean, she just had that attitude like she didn't want me there or looked at me like she was annoyed every time I was there, probably thinking I was coming on to her. And I'm like, I don't care about you or your existence. I just want food. So I was there quite a few times, but it was expensive, so I had to go like once a week or so. I had to limit my budget to everything. And after a few months of being there, it just became a dark cloud. I remember I'd hang around Chinatown quite a lot. I had some fun adventures in Chinatown. As I was learning the area, things were getting better. I'd hang out at Market Basket till 10:30 a.m., get DoorDash, and if not, go to the beach, wait for DoorDash, dash around the area. And I remember once the day was over, which was like 9:30 or so, head to the Boston Common Garage, drive in, boop, get my ticket, head to the spot where I need to go, which was mostly like the lower levels, because that's where the cold air sinks, because in the summertime the heat will rise, and if you're on the third floor, you will sweat. So when I was in the parking garage sleeping in my car and I had to use the bathroom, especially late at night, this was how I did it. I memorized the area quite well. See the goose logo? All the areas have different logos, like a sailboat, the City Hall building. The goose logo had the bathroom. Now this is upper level. So you go down to the middle level, which is down these stairs. Then I would walk down here, just pretending I'm looking at my phone, as right to my left is where the security or where people who work here go, and right here is the bathroom. It was never locked. I remember when I first got here, I was like, oh, There used to be a homeless guy sleeping on here with all his stuff on top. He would just sit here all day. So I remember sleeping in the back seat of that car. The first week, I remember it was so scary. I remember as I'm sitting in the front seat, I'm being vigilant, checking out for danger, and you see security riding that conveyor belt thing slowly, like every aisle left and right. He looks, he sees me, he's like, as I'm trying to sleep, and I'm like, we just make eye contact, and he's like, it was a lot of fun. I was always scared of security or police, and I remember the first week I had about 68 hours of no sleep. I had about 3 or 4 nights straight of no sleep the first week I got there. And I remember I was getting what people call micro sleeps, where you like kind of sleep halfway, but then at the same time it feels like it's real. And during that micro sleep I kept picturing that the Boston police were right behind me and then flashing their lights with 10 cop cars pulling me out of the back seat and taking me to jail. And I wake up and I realize, whoa, I'm in the front seat and it's quiet and I don't hear anything except like security with their key rattling. It was really scary, like the first week. It really was. The only thing that was scary was me because I slept there for 3 months remaining vigilant. Until like the sirens are going off, like I mentioned on the video. That was when I left. So I remember, yeah, I would sleep in the night car, and I was getting smarter about sleeping in the car too. I would like arrange my stuff, put my bike back in the trunk, and then sleep right between. But then I put the bike in the back seat hanging around. And this was a BMX bike, so the cable for the front brakes kind of stuck out. And then the rim of the wheel, where it has all the slats around it, that created an airflow. This was the best time of the year to sleep like that. So I had my wool blanket. I would put it on top over the bicycle where the brake cable loop is. It's hanging over, and then you got the bicycle wheel and the rims creating an airflow so that way you don't put the blanket around you and suffocate. And that created a good airflow. And while I was sleeping, the door back seat was really hurting my head because I can only fit so much unless I slept diagonally with my feet way up. Like I couldn't sleep with my legs extended most of the time. And so I had my sun visor, a little reflective thing you use for the summer. I used that as a pillow. And the bicycle hangs over. I got some like clothes and other objects in the back seat of the car. And you wouldn't know anybody's in there unless you peek at the window and see me tossing and turning a little bit. Other than that, you wouldn't have any idea I am sleeping in that car. And I made it that way. It was pretty clever. And so at the people at the market basket that I mentioned earlier, they were fascinated to hear my story, how I slept in that car. Literally 10 of them all gathered around with that one guy who was like the little bit of the star of the show. He would point the back seat and say, "This kid sleeps in the back seat of this car. Like, can you believe that?" And they were all impressed. They were like, "We are impressed that you were able to sleep in that car." Like, dude, I didn't think anybody could fit in there. Like, that is such a tiny amount of space. Like, goddamn. And that gave me an idea. I was like, dude, nobody knows I'm sleeping in that car. So I was getting a little more comfortable. And so as time's going on, at the end of the night, I would get in the Boss Common Garage, second, third, or lower level, whatever. I would get out my bicycle, ride in the Common, head to Chinatown, get some meals real quick. Went to the same place quite a bit. I tried out different areas. And I remember, like, I would get on the bicycle, come back in. I tried making it look like I'm productive. I'd get on the bike, ride around for a bit, go to Chinatown, get a meal, come back at around 2 a.m. or so. And I remember I put the bike in. I figured out how to do it one way instead of struggling. I put it in, let it sit as far back in the corner. Then I would start out by crawling in the back seat, but then that draw too much attention because somebody crawls in the back seat, they never come out. That just brings attention. So what I did was I would get in the front seat and then I would do like a backflip a little bit towards the back seat. The side of my ankle hit the bicycle a few times. That hurt. So I would crawl down. I had my gym bag on one side and then I had my tube amp on the other. So the little floor mat side of the back seat had a even surface. The gym bag got a little pushy, and so I had the sun visor and I slept, and that was how I did it. It was actually really fun. I was just in fear because it just felt like an endless loop cycle, sleeping in the car, and I only did like 4 hours of sleep because the 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. was the $5 parking rate. So every time I go to pay to park the car, I'm watching the sun come up in the Boston Common, and it was actually a pretty spectacular view. But most of the time it was foggy, or I just left before the sun comes up. There were times I would sleep in that car for 12 hours because I'm just so tired and burnt out from all the bike riding for miles and then coming back in the back seat. And I have a lot more stories to it, but this is like all the time I have. And I'm kind of getting spacey, getting sleepy. So, hope that story was great. See ya.